Hi, I'm Alex Liu, and this is Crash Course US History. And today we're going to learn about one of the major topics during the 1920s, the Nativism and the resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan, or rather the KKK. Many native-born Protestants during this time actually pointed at immigration as the primary cause of America's perceived moral decline. A Maryland congressman even referred to newcomers as indigestible lumps in the national stomach, which is ironic considering his social-economic status probably made him even lumpier. Following these insensitive beliefs, the 1920s also brought a nationwide resurgence of the KKK with their extremely blunt motto, Native White Protestant Supremacy.
Nativism is a policy of protecting the interests of native-born and established inhabitants against those of immigrants and outsiders. Although nativism was a common trend in many countries prior to its emergence in the United States, its first signs of widespread American popularity came in 1854 when nativists formed the American Party, or the Know Nothing Party. They were hostile to the immigration of Irish Catholics, and they sought to protect traditional American values of the time. Along with the increase of immigrants with the second wave of immigration in the United States throughout the 1800s, nativism became progressively mainstream. With World War I soon after the turn of the 20th century, the hostility against foreigners increased in America, especially against those of German descent. In Minnesota, Germans were the single largest ethnic group, and self-proclaimed patriots in the state often attacked German Americans in the area, suspecting them of traitorous intent. This trend continued long after the war as well, extending into the 1920s era. In the Sacco and Vanzetti trial in Massachusetts, the jury convicted Sacco and Vanzetti, two Italian immigrants, of first-degree murder and sentenced them to death. Anti-Italian and anti-immigrant bias was suspected to have had a major effect on the verdict for this trial, exposing the ever-present nativist bias throughout American society. The Immigration Act of 1924, or the National Origins Act, severely restricted the number of immigrants that were allowed entry into the U.S. through a national origins quota. This quota provided visas to only 2% of the total population of each nationality in the U.S. In addition, this quota used numbers from the 1890 National Census, which provided inaccurate information that did not represent the actual number of each nationality in the 1920s.
During the 1920s, cultural conflict and modernization helped resuscitate the Ku Klux Klan. Whereas the original KKK was a violent, racist organization born in the post-Civil War South, the modern Klan was driven by somewhat different concerns. Many white, lower-middle-class Protestant Americans in the North and Midwest were fearful that immigrants were challenging traditional American culture, and they responded with anti-Catholicism and anti-Semitism. The revival of the KKK can be traced to the film titled The Birth of a Nation by D.W. Griffith. This film, as well as other books, promoted the lost cause of the views that were held during the Civil War, specifically in Atlanta, where members of the group burned a cross on Stone Mountain, signaling a revival of the KKK. Charging $10 to join, the members of the KKK wore sheet-like masks and outfits and often fought violently against rights to free to African Americans. As the KKK membership increased, money poured in and funded many acts of violence towards African Americans. Some were vocal about advertising not only their businesses but also their KKK membership, giving their businesses names such as Quick Car Wash, Cars, and Country Kitchen. This second Klan can easily be as violent as its Reconstruction-era ancestor, but it's more fraternal and social, though its brand of socializing was restricted to native-born Protestant whites. It supported the recently enacted national prohibition on alcoholic beverages and opposed labor unions, immigration, and foreign entanglements such as the League of Nations. The Klan was especially hostile to blacks, Catholics, and Jews, and the original Klan had been specifically formed to combat freedoms for freed slaves, and the new Klan continued that trend. Just as quickly as the Klan rose in membership and influence, however, it collapsed. Some members were embarrassed by the organization's bigotry, some by its ridiculous ceremonies or its money-grabbing. Others were repulsed by its violence or its hypocrisy. Ultimately, due to its poor leadership, the KKK saw a severe decline, as well as opposition to civil rights after World War I decrease.
Nativism and the KKK had lasting and marring impacts on society in the 1920s, so much so that these ideas are still prevalent in today's world. Nativism is not common among the masses, but where it is centralized, it is a massive issue. For example, Donald Trump wanted to build a wall spanning across the Mexican border in order to keep them out. Not only this, but he wanted the Mexican government to pay for it. Part of the reason he wanted this was because he feared that illegal immigrants were taking away too many jobs and taking advantage of America's rights and freedoms. This is one of the major reasons nativism surfaced in the 1920s as well. The KKK is not as mainstream as nativism, though it is arguably more of a problem due to the extreme violence associated with it. Despite this, in 1975, an organization was formed called the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, which specifically focused on targeting their ideals towards the media and now the internet. Many Southerners still hold subtle racist ideals that have been passed down through the generations. We'll discuss more of these clashes between cultures and prohibition and gangsters next week. Thank you for watching.